Black Clover Chapter 308. Today we show why Yunus' second magic might be ice magic, and we explain why the soul of Lichtsan is still inside Yuno. Also, only a small percentage of the people who watch our videos are actually subscribed, so if you end up liking this video, consider subscribing. Please enjoy this video, let's go! Our theory about Yunus' elf soul has come true. However, many people are still confused about the new Black Clover Chapter 308 because there's no proper explanation in the manga to as why Yuno is the only one who has not lost his elf soul. And so today, instead of presenting this as a mere theory, we can explain the reason for Yuno's second soul. But before we get to the explanation, let's talk briefly about Yuno's second magic ability and why we think it might be ice magic. This is the hottest topic of the chapter and will only take a short moment. The reason we think it might be ice magic is because many years ago, two royals in the Spade Kingdom turned into demon gods. The Grimoire family managed to defeat the two demon gods, and they have been guarding these two ancient demons ever since. One of the demon gods was frozen in a huge wall of ice, suggesting that someone with ice magic managed to trap the demon god inside. I think we can at least consider the possibility that the Grimoire family uses ice magic, or at least something related to ice and cold. Such magic would perfectly represent winter in the Spade Kingdom. Now let's start with the explanation for Yunus' elf soul. It all starts with a moment when we saw all the people being freed from their elf souls. But for some reason we didn't see Yunus' elf soul leaving his body. So there must be a reason why Yunus is the only exception compared to all other humans. In fact, there was someone else to whom the same thing happened, because Raya also couldn't pass into the afterlife, just like the soul of Lichtsan. He explained that a soul that is too tightly bound to the human body cannot leave the body, and so in his case it was just too late. And now comes the important part. We know that the body of an elf soul at the time of death must resemble the human body into which it is to reincarnate, especially physically. This means that at least the gender and age of the new body must match the original body of the elf soul. This is very important to understand because it is a great misconception that Lichtsan, that is Yunus' elf soul, was reincarnated into Yunus' human body when Yuno was already 16. This is fundamentally wrong. Yunus' elf soul is Lichtsan and therefore died when he was still unborn, meaning that his physical body, which is connected to the soul, is literally unborn and therefore can only be reborn in another unborn body. The only moment when both Yunus' human body and the reincarnated soul of Lichtsan were the same age, which is the requirement for the reincarnation, and therefore the only moment when the reincarnation could have taken place was when Yuno himself was still unborn. This means that Lichtsan was reincarnated into Yunus' body 17 years ago and that he has been living together with Yuno ever since. The question arises to why Lichtsan never took control of Yuno's body as Patri did with William's body. We can assume that Patri, due to the fact that he actually lived before his death and thus was able to consciously take control of William's body. But Lichtsan died before he was born and thus couldn't develop a real consciousness because he never really experienced life. So he could not take control as easily as Patri did, but lived like a sleeping observer in Yuno's body, unconsciously witnessing everything Yuno did throughout his life. The fact that the sleeping soul can observe everything that the active soul does was confirmed on several occasions. In this way, Patri was able to help William select the new member of the Golden Dawn, who would later be used for the reincarnation of the elves. Or when Elf Luck began to cry because the human Luck saw his friends being beaten up by his own body. Another great example is Rill falling in love with Charmy's human form when she fought Elf Rill. Or when Charlotte could remember the moment when Yami and Charla sought protection from Zagreat's magic. In the same way, Lichtsan was able to observe Yuno's entire life, with the difference that he thought it was his own. When the Reincarnation Spell was activated, the human soul was forcibly suppressed, and the elven soul then took control of the human body. All the other elves who had already lived their own conscious and independent lives in the past, during which they were able to gather their own memories and experiences that made their soul an individual person, could then immediately and consciously control the bodies without any problems. Lichtsan, on the other hand, seemed sleepy and confused. Many people mistakenly believed that this was due to the fact that Licht's unborn son was reincarnated into Yuno's body basically as a fetus. But what really happened was that Lichtsan, as always, simply observed everything Yuno did. For him it was as if he was still watching everything everything Yuno was doing until Asta woke him up with his Wizard King speech. Then we saw all his memories resurface and he became aware of the situation. But the human Yuno still slept and watched what his elf soul was doing. But in the case of Yuno and Licht Sun, the reincarnation is completely different from others, because both of them have always shared the same experiences and memories. Neither of them has ever done anything without the other. So for the human Yuno, observing what the elven Yuno did during the elven reincarnation is if he had experienced it himself, and the other way around. For Licht Sun, everything Yuno has done in his entire life is also his own reality and consequently his own life, which is why he identifies himself as Yuno from the Clover Kingdom and nobody else. And that's exactly what he said, and I quote, "I can say their bodies are currently controlled by other souls. Their original soul has been put to sleep, and there's also a soul in me, but I am a magic knight of the Clover Kingdom. I am Yuno and nobody else." This sentence is very important to prove that the person speaking is not the human Yuno, but the elf Yuno. Why should human Yuno have said that he is Yuno when it is so obvious that he is Yuno, since he clearly has his memories? It is simply unnecessary for him to confirm that. However, if we assume that this person is indeed Licht Sun, who was now given control for the first time, then it makes sense why he felt the need to identify himself as Yuno as well, since he has the same memories as the human Yuno. Both are basically the same person, that is, two souls mixed into one person. Not like Patri and William, where two souls have two different lives, different memories, and different experiences. But Yuno and Licht Sun are both Yuno from the Clover Kingdom, one and the same person. The only thing that Elf Yuno could possibly remember is what happened in Tetya's womb, before he was born. So no real experience but perceptions, for example his father's mana. And this is exactly the only thing he could remember from his past life, when he wasn't controlling the elf reincarnation. When he fought alongside Licht, he thought, "What is this feeling? It's warm and nostalgic." This proves that Licht Sun was in control and not human Yuno, because human Yuno never felt Licht's mana before. But elf Yuno, who is Licht Sun, should be able to remember the feeling of his father's mana when he was unborn. And if we now remember what Raya said about souls being too tightly bound to the body, then we can assume that the soul of Licht Sun is too tightly bound to Yuno's body and therefore cannot leave anymore. And now my partner Yami will further explain how Yuno was able to trigger the communication with Licht Sun and why he received a new magic and with it a new Grimoire. But before I give the mic to my partner, please take a short moment to like this video. It really helps us a lot. Thank you.
The fact that Yuno got his necklace back, even though the whole point of the magic stone was to manifest Zagrege's body from the underworld, must be important to Yuno in some way. And the new Black Clover chapter, chapter 308, shows us why. To understand why Yuno got the magic stone back, we first need to understand what a magic stone actually is and what it can be used for. Magic stones are ancient jewels of the elves that increase the magic power of the user and can be used as a multiplier for spells. The use of the magic stones has a great danger because the stones are connected to the underworld. However, those who have a high level of magic can safely use them. This is only possible for elves and delves because humans simply don't have enough magic, and thus Yuno as a human is in great danger of being negatively affected by the energy from the underworld if he decides to use the magic stone. But with the latest revelation that Licht Sun is still inside Yuno, he will be able to use the magic stone without any problems. The magic stones were used to activate the Reincarnation Spell in the Elf Reincarnation arc, and now in the new Black Clover chapter we can clearly see how Yuno's necklace has the spotlight. It is safe to assume that the reason Yuno was able to communicate with Licht Sun is for two reasons. First, because it's possible that Licht Sun, after being awakened in the Elf Reincarnation arc, has developed a consciousness of his own, and thus is able to communicate with Yuno's human soul as if they were two different people, even though they clearly share the same memories and experiences. The only time when Licht Sun and human Yuno are really two different people is when they communicate with each other, and this is also the only moment when both of them can develop different personalities. Otherwise, everything they experienced in life is as if each of them were experiencing it at the same moment, which is clearly symbolized by the fact that Yuno is able to use two grimoires at the same moment. The difference with Patri and William is that one of them should take control of the body. They lose the ability to use the magic of the other soul, since we know that magic is bound to the soul and therefore to the grimoire. The fact that Yuno is able to use 2 grimoires and 2 magic abilities at the same time clearly shows us that both souls are one and the same person, and only for themselves are they 2 different personalities that can communicate with each other. When the resistance of the Spade Kingdom found out that Yuno was a wind mage, they seemed a little surprised that Yuno possessed wind magic, as if they were wondering how that could be possible since Yuno's parents may not even have wind magic. But we know one person who had wind magic and is also connected to Yuno in an indirect way, namely Tetia Silvermelon, the mother of Yuno's elven soul. And now we have confirmation that Yuno's wind magic is indeed not his own magic, but the magical attribute inherited by Lich's son from his mother Tetia Silvermelon. So Yuno has 2 souls, 2 magic attributes, and 2 grimoires. Do you know what that means? Well boys, let me tell you what that means. That means that our theory has turned out to be correct, and that's the power of Unami. Now let's move on to the new chapter, chapter 308. Finral and Rangaris start their attack. Together they are much stronger. Finral uses ruins to move faster, while Rangaris allows them to move inside ultimate space by protecting both from Zenon's attacks. No matter how strong Zenon is, both are confident in defeating the devil host of one of the 3 rulers of the underworld, Beelzebub, the space devil. Finral really changed a lot, from the scary cat who was always hiding to a proud and a powerful magic knight who is currently facing one of the strongest beings in the Black Clover universe. And he has absolutely no fear. He just went into battle with the intention of winning. His character development is great, but unfortunately it wasn't enough, and that is no surprise. We are talking about one of the 3 rulers of the underworld here. Zenon didn't even appear to take them seriously in any way, and so he defeated them without any problems. Then we see Yuno unconscious, remembering his past and all of his comrades who died fighting Zenon. He quickly realized that he has sworn to defeat Zenon and save his Captain William. He has promised to avenge all of his fallen comrades, and he cannot break the promise under any circumstances. Then he also remembers the promise he made to Asta to become the Wizard King, the same promise that was shown in the Black Clover exhibition. Unfortunately, it looks like the promise will be broken late in the story anyway, but for the moment, this promise gives Yuno the strength to come back and finish the fight. He wakes up and finds himself in an infinite empty white space with only himself and his elf soul. My boy Yuno has already explained everything, so we can skip this part. The important thing here is that Lich's son clearly confirms that he and the human Yuno are the same person, but each of them has their own magic. Yuno then receives his second grimoire from the Spade Kingdom. And now to end this video, let's talk a little bit more about Yuno's magic stone. We know that the magic stones can be used to enhance magic and also use magic from the underworld. Without Yuno's elf soul, Yuno would have no use for it. Otherwise, he could have been affected by the energies from the underworld and thus would not be able to use the magic stone in the long run. But with the new revelation, it has been confirmed that Yuno will be able to use the magic stone to cast even more powerful spells and possibly even forbidden magic without being affected by any side effects. This is an extremely powerful tool that Yuno has been given. One of the forbidden spells is the Elf Reincarnation Spell, which would allow Yuno to use his elven mana just as he did in the Elf Reincarnation arc. However, this is only possible or makes sense if Yuno hasn't already gained access to the elven mana after talking to Lich's son. Whether this is the case, it will probably be revealed in the next chapter. Let us know in the comments below what you think of this new chapter. So if you like this video, don't forget to smash the like button, and if you are new to our channel, make sure you subscribe with the notification bell turned on. See you guys in the next video. Yummy out.